Good evening, my dear friends. I welcome you to a talk on the balance of trade, which will help us to know the state of affairs of a nation in the foreign trade policy. At the outset, we need to know that meaning of foreign trade. Foreign trade is a trade between various nations across the world, which is also known as global trade. Here, import trade, export trade, and entry port trade. These three will comprise the foreign trade. We know that import trade is nothing but procuring or purchasing of goods from other countries wherein the domestic supplies are not adequate and there was need to purchase from elsewhere. Coming to export trade, it is selling away or sending of goods from our country to foreign countries where there is good demand, and because of the bilateral trade agreements in the various international fora, we had to bind to continue some exports as a matter of policy. Then coming to intra-import trade, it is a hybrid activity which involves the features of both importing initially the raw materials and adding some ingredients or making some additional inputs with the due marking and packing and branding with a view to re-export to those countries where there is demand for our products. In case of exports, we'll have inflow of cash flow reserves, whereas in imports, we'll have outflow of our cash reserves to foreign countries will take place. In the general view, the foreign trade is considered to be highly advantageous in getting the foreign exchange reserves from other countries to our country, and also in honoring the bilateral trade agreements, which also promote the harmony, friendly relations with nations. But sometimes this trade will also affect our local domestic markets. When the goods are imported from outside, naturally it will be weakening our products. So also it affects our exchequer as it results in outflow of cash reserves from our country to other nations. Now we need to have the clear idea of balance of trade. The foreign trade policy is designed keeping in view the state of affairs of the country, taking into account the degree of balance of trade, and so also the balance of payments position which is present in the country. We need to know the clear idea and we should have the meaning of balance of trade and also balance of payment. Balance of trade is the difference in the value of exports and imports of only tangible items, but it will not include invisible items like services. Whereas coming to balance of payments, it is a documentary record of all the transactions of economic nature that the country had with the rest of the world involving foreign trade aspects. Now we will see furthermore about balance of trade. A country's balance of trade is the relationship between the country's exports and imports in terms of monetary value. A country is said to be having a favorable balance or experiencing positive balance of trade in which the value of the exports generally exceed the value of imports. Here, exports are greater than imports. And coming to a negative balance of trade, it leads to deficit in the balance of exchange. The situation here is the vice versa of the above, wherein the imports are exceeding in value than those of exports. In general, every nation will generally have a positive outlook to maintain positive balance of trade because it is the need of the hour for every country to maintain a favorable balance where it is indicating more income and less expenditure. If we see favorable balance is one where more revenues and less expenses are there. Or in terms of foreign exchange, more outflow, more inflows by way of exports and less outflows because of imports in Indian currency will be taking place. At the same time, we need to know the balance of payments. Balance of payments is an accounting record of all the monetary transactions made by the nation with other nations given in a time frame, maybe financial year or accounting year or calendar year, say 1 year. A balance of payments is a numerical statement which is containing a summary of international transactions. But the summary will be shown by converting all the currency values into our national values of the denominations of currency which we follow in our country. As seen from the above, balance of payments is a statement wherein the exports are recorded as inflows, showing the cash reserves to come in with the positive items because it helps the government to earn foreign exchange. Coming to expenditure, which is incurred in respect of imports, which is leading to the outflow of cash, will be shown in the negative items. The difference between the inflow and outflows will be playing a vital role in drafting the foreign trade policy statement. Now we'll go deep into the balance of trade. At the outset, we'll have an understanding of the meaning of balance of trade. In general, the term trade refers to the buying and selling of activities of goods and services between buyers and sellers in the country. So it is domestic trade, where both sellers and buyers are residing within the territorial jurisdiction of a nation. And in case of global trade, where the balance of trade refers to the balance of imports and exports of goods and services made to and by the country during a particular financial year, say 1 year. Balance of trade indicates net exports that make up the balance of payments. Now we need to know the definition of balance of trade. One author by name Mr. Benham, he defined the balance of trade as the relationship over a period of time between the values of exports and imports. Here, The balance of trade is known for its being stated officially in a clear manner with respect of balance of merchandise pertaining to the visible goods or tangible goods which we can see physically, and in respect of invisible or intangible goods in the form of services. This is very clear. Every year, the Ministry of Commerce, the Government of India, will be publishing the data on the balance of trade for use of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry and also other stake players to make use of it from time to time. Now, we need to know the different types of balance of trade. There are two types of balance of trade, namely the unfavorable balance being shown as trade deficit, and the second one, the favorable balance being mentioned as trade surplus. Now we'll have a detailed understanding as to the trade deficit. At the outset, a trade deficit is a situation in the balance of trade with unfavorable or negative balance, wherein the quantum of imports are exceeding the quantum of exports. This is an unfavorable trade position. In this trade deficit, outflow of domestic cash reserves to foreign markets will take place. Similarly, it will act with adverse effect on the economy. Moreover, demand for currency will occur when there is trade deficit because of the imports when they exceed the quantum of exports. This is the situation where trade surplus is a situation giving the reverse view of trade deficit. It gives a favorable balance or positive balance where the quantum of exports value is more than that of the value of imports. The trade surplus is also known as favorable balance. It shows the net inflow of domestic currency from foreign markets as we are earning foreign exchange. But it is very important to keep a striking balance between the trade surplus and trade deficit. But there are certain factors which are affecting the balance of trade in any economy. These factors are categorized in 4 different types, namely productivity factors, endowment factors, barriers to the trade, and demand for the product. We will discuss the above factors one by one. The first one among these 4 factors is endowment factors. It is used to show the capabilities of our land, labor, and capital. Labor is nothing but the manpower, workforce, which includes the skilled technicians and unskilled or semi-skilled technicians, all comprise in the labor. Coming to the land, it refers to the real site or natural resources which are available and other inputs like raw materials where wood, fuels, coal, petroleum, gas, iron ore, or manganese, coal, aluminum, bauxite, and the like will cover. Then coming to the capital items, we need to have a review of the infrastructure and our machine powers with advanced technology and operating efficiency, considering the scales of operation of our activities. The second one is about the productivity offers in the factors of affecting our balance of trade. The productivity factor will be referring to the degree of specialization and excellence in the quality of those sectors. For example, if there are 2 nations with equal volume of labor force and land endowment, wherein one country has skilled labor force and usually its capacity of highly productive resources will be assessed. Whereas coming to a similar country without skilled labor and having semi-skilled or unskilled in larger volume will definitely will show only poor or lesser productive efficiency. Now, if we compare these two, we can have a clear understanding as to the advantage of productive sectors in the foreign trade to maintain balance of trade. Naturally, a country with skilled labor force can derive the advantages of machinery, and up-to-date technology and hi-fi features of the research and development, and also the modern methods and techniques in production technology, which ultimately will bring the productive levels at a higher side. Second one is, if more and more resources are tapped to extract the natural resources, this will be beneficial in the short run. Of course, this will improve the productivity, but in the years to come, this may also pose some problem. Coming to the trade barriers. A literal meaning of barrier is nothing but a stumbling block or a thing which hinders the progress. So the trade barriers definitely will affect the exports and imports of the country. The policies with restricted imports and subsidized exports will affect the relative price levels. Sometimes unexpected disruptions and disturbances in the international relations, like that of recent Galwan attack by Chinese army, will definitely pose a problem, and it affected the trade relations, leading to banning of so many apps in software and dispensing with so many contracts which are entered earlier. Moreover, import quotas also raise the relative prices of imported goods, which will in turn reduce the demand. Sometimes the non-tariff barriers will also affect the balance of trade, because of lacking in infrastructure. This will reflect in the increase in the cost and affects the cost of goods in the exports. In the bidding in a global competition, we may not withstand, as the cost of production is more, so it may also be a weak point for us to face them in the global markets. The next aspect which plays the vital role is the demand for the products will also affect the balance of trade in the country. We know demand is a desire backed by the purchasing power. When there is purchasing power, definitely